The wind howled like a tormented soul across the snow-swept moors of Yorkshire, blanketing Frost Manor in an impenetrable shroud of white. It was the winter of 1932, and the grand estate, isolated amid the frozen wilderness, hosted a gathering of family and friends for what was meant to be a festive retreat. But as the clock struck midnight, a piercing scream shattered the silence. Chapter 1. The Gathering Storm. The wind did not merely blow, it screamed. It clawed at the leaded windows of Frost Manor with the fury of 1,000 banshees, hurling snow against the glass in relentless, crystalline volleys. Outside, the Yorkshire moors had vanished entirely, swallowed by a white oblivion that erased horizon, road, and memory alike. Inside, the great house stood defiant, an island of flickering gaslight and mahogany shadows, its inhabitants marooned by a storm that seemed less meteorological than malevolent. It was the winter of 1932, and Frost Manor, perched upon its crag like some brooding medieval fortress, had become a prison of velvet and gilt. Sir Reginald Frost, baronet, industrial titan, and patriarch of a dynasty forged in the furnaces of Sheffield steel, had summoned his nearest and dearest for what he termed a Yuletide reconciliation. The phrase had been delivered with his customary iron inflection, but beneath it lurked something sharper, a blade wrapped in tinsel. Hercule Poirot, the celebrated Belgian detective whose reputation had long ago transcended the borders of his adopted England, had accepted the invitation with his usual blend of curiosity and courtesy. He had arrived 2 days prior, conveyed by a chauffeur Daimler that now lay buried beneath a drift in the stable yard. Poirot, a creature of order and symmetry, found the chaos of the storm distasteful. Yet he sensed, with the instinct of a bloodhound scenting quarry, that chaos often concealed the most exquisite puzzles. The manor itself was a monument to Victorian ambition. Its halls were panelled in dark oak, carved with grotesque faces that leered from the wainscoting. Portraits of Frost ancestors, stern men with mutton-chop whiskers and women in bombazine, stared down with the imperious disdain of the newly ennobled. The air smelled of beeswax, coal smoke, and the faint metallic tang of impending violence. Dinner had been served at 8 in the long gallery, a cavernous chamber lit by a chandelier that trembled in the draughts. The table, set for 7, groaned beneath silver platters of roast pheasant, venison in claret sauce, and a towering syllabub that quivered like a guilty conscience. Sir Reginald presided at the head, his broad shoulders straining the seams of his dinner jacket, his face a map of empire, ruddy, jowled, and utterly unyielding. To his right sat Lady Amelia Frost, 42 years of calculated beauty preserved in pearls and poise. Her gown of midnight blue velvet clung to her like a secret, and her eyes, pale grey, almost silver, flicked restlessly over the company as if cataloguing sins. Opposite her lounged Edgar Frost, the heir apparent, 26 and already dissolute. His tie was askew, his cheeks flushed with brandy, and his laughter rang too loudly, as though daring the storm to drown it. At the foot of the table, Clarissa Frost, 19, ethereal and trembling like the syllabub, picked at her food with the delicacy of a bird. Her gown of palest lilac seemed to absorb the candlelight rather than reflect it, and her voice, when she spoke, was barely audible above the wind. Beside her, Dr. Mortimer Thorne, a chemist of some renown and Sir Reginald's oldest friend, puffed contemplatively on a pipe, the smoke curling like question marks around his aquiline features. Mr. Hawkins the butler moved among them with the silent efficiency of a shadow. 55, ramrod straight, his face a mask of impeccable neutrality, He had served the frosts for 3 decades. His hands, gloved in white, poured wine with the precision of a surgeon, but Poirot noted the faint tremor when Sir Reginald barked an order. Poirot himself occupied the place of honour to Sir Reginald's left. He ate sparingly, une petite bouchée of pheasant, a sip of claret, his moustache immaculate, his green eyes glittering with observation. He listened more than he spoke, for in the silences between words, truths often slipped their leashes. Conversation, such as it was, revolved around the storm. Sir Reginald dominated, as was his habit. "This blizzard," he boomed, carving the venison with unnecessary vigour, "is nature's way of enforcing solitude. No post, no telephones, no meddlesome outsiders, just us, family." His gaze swept the table like a searchlight. "And friends." Lady Amelia's smile was a porcelain crack. "How fortunate we are, Reginald, to be so intimate," Edgar snorted. "Intimate as a debtor's prison." "Mind your tongue, boy," Sir Reginald snapped, "or I'll cut you off without a shilling." Clarissa flinched. Dr. Thorne exhaled a plume of smoke that smelled faintly of chemicals. Hawkins refilled glasses with mechanical grace. Poirot interjected smoothly, his accent a melodic contrast to the Yorkshire bluntness. "Mais non, Sir Reginald. Solitude is the crucible of truth. In such isolation, the soul reveals itself, comme un papillon emerging from its cocoon." Sir Reginald grunted. "Belgian fancies. I prefer steel to butterflies." The meal progressed. Dessert was served. Crème brûlée with a crust of caramelized sugar that shattered like thin ice under the spoon. Coffee followed, strong and bitter. Then, as the clock in the hall struck 10, Sir Reginald pushed back his chair. "Enough. I have correspondence to attend. Hawkins, the study fire." "Very good, sir." The butler inclined his head. Lady Amelia rose. "I shall retire. The storm unsettles me." Edgar smirked. "I'll be in the billiard room." "Anyone care to lose a sovereign?" Clarissa murmured. "I think I'll read in the library." Dr. Thorne tapped out his pipe. "I've a monograph to finish. Good night." Poirot lingered, watching the dispersal. Sir Reginald strode toward the west wing, his footsteps echoing like gunshots on the marble. Hawkins followed with a candelabrum. The others melted into the shadows of their chosen sanctuaries. The storm intensified. Snow hissed against the windows. Somewhere, a shutter banged like a desperate fist. Poirot ascended the grand staircase, his patent leather shoes silent on the runner. His room was in the east tower, a circular chamber with a 4-poster bed and a fireplace that roared defiance at the cold. He removed his coat, smoothed his moustache, and consulted his pocket watch. 10:47 p.m. He was not tired. The little grey cells, they buzzed like bees in a hive. Something in the air, beyond the storm, untension palpable. He opened his window a crack. The wind rushed in, carrying ice crystals that stung like needles. Below, the courtyard was a white void, the stables invisible. No footprints marred the snow. The world had been erased. Closing the window, Poirot sat at the small escritoire and began to jot notes in his precise, slanted hand. He underlined the last. Earlier, in the flicker of the chandelier, he had glimpsed a dark smudge on the butler's pristine sleeve. Ink? Blood? The study's fountain pen had been uncapped on the blotter. A scream shattered his reverie. It came from below, high, piercing, unmistakably Lady Amelia's. Poirot was moving before conscious thought, his dressing gown flapping like a cape. He descended the stairs 2 at a time, colliding with Edgar, who emerged from the billiard room clutching a cue like a weapon. "What the devil?" Another scream. They ran together toward the west wing, where Dr. Thorne and Clarissa converged, the latter's face drained of colour. Hawkins appeared from a side corridor, candelabrum aloft, his composure cracked. "The study!" Lady Amelia's voice, now a sob. "Reginald, he's—" The study door was closed, oak and iron-bound. Hawkins tried the handle. Locked. "Sir Reginald!" he called. No answer. Edgar shouldered forward. "Stand aside." He rammed the door with the cue. Once, twice. Wood splintered. The lock gave. They burst in. The room was warm. Trop chaude, Poirot thought instantly. The fire blazed in the grate, casting lurid shadows across Persian rugs and leather-bound books. Sir Reginald sat at his desk, head slumped forward, arms splayed. His dinner jacket was immaculate, his tie straight, but his skin, mon Dieu, his skin was blue. Not the blue of bruising, but a crystalline glacial azure, as though he had been carved from ice. Frost feathered his eyebrows, his moustache, the cuffs of his shirt. His eyes stared sightlessly, pupils dilated, rhymed with rhyme. The brandy glass before him was tipped over, a frozen puddle spreading like a miniature glacier across the blotter. Lady Amelia stood frozen, le mot juste, in the doorway, one gloved hand pressed to her mouth. Clarissa whimpered. Edgar swore. Dr. Thorne pushed past, kneeling beside the body. He's rigid, like marble. The doctor's fingers recoiled from the cold. But the room, it's 80 degrees if it's a degree. Poirot stepped forward, his gaze sweeping the scene with surgical precision. The window was latched, curtains undisturbed. Snow pressed against the panes, but showed no breach. The door had been locked from within. The key still protruded from the inside keyhole. No footprints led to or from the desk. The safe in the corner stood ajar, its contents rifled. "Personne entered or left," Poirot murmured. "Yet Sir Reginald is frozen, as if immersed in the Arctic. The thermometer confirms warmth. The fire burns, and yet—" He touched the corpse's cheek, glacé, unyielding. "C'est impossible." Hawkins, recovering, stammered, "I banked the fire myself at 10:15, sir. Left him with his correspondence." "What correspondence?" Poirot's voice was soft but edged. "A letter, sir. Sealed. He said it was private." Lady Amelia found her voice. "He was alive when I passed the door at 11. I heard him humming. That wretched tune from the war." Edgar laughed, a brittle sound. "Keep the home fires burning. How apt." Clarissa began to cry. Dr. Thorne stood. "We must move him. Rigger aside, the cold. It's unnatural." "Non." Poirot's hand shot out. "Touch nothing. This is a tableau, mes amis. A crime most ingenious. The storm isolates us. The room is sealed. The body defies nature. We are in the presence of a murder most foul." He turned to the group, his eyes glittering like emeralds in the firelight. "From this moment, no one leaves the manor. No one enters this room without my permission. Hawkins, fetch blankets. Cover the body, but disturb nothing. Lady Amelia, brandy for the ladies. Edgar, secure the billiard-room windows. Dr. Thorne, your medical bag. Tout de suite. Clarissa, remain with your mother." As they scattered, Poirot knelt beside the desk. The frozen brandy puddle had preserved a fingerprint parfait. The letter Hawkins mentioned was gone, but a corner of heavy cream paper protruded from beneath the blotter. Poirot teased it free with tweezers from his pocket. A single line, in Sir Reginald's bold hand, "The past thaws slowly, but it thaws." Below, a postscript in different ink. "Tonight, the truth freezes." Poirot's moustache twitched. He slipped the fragment into his waistcoat. Outside, the storm redoubled its fury, as if enraged by the intrusion. Inside, the fire crackled, indifferent to the corpse it warmed. Somewhere in the manor, a clock chimed midnight. Poirot stood alone with the frozen dead man, the weight of 7 souls pressing upon him. The little grey cells stirred, hungry, The gathering storm had broken. The hunt had begun. Chapter 2. Shadows of the Past. The morning after the scream, Frost Manor woke to a world erased. Snow pressed against every window like a living thing, blotting out the sun until the house seemed suspended in a pearl-grey limbo. The storm had not relented. It had merely paused, gathering breath for a fresh assault. Inside, the air tasted of coal smoke, fear, and the metallic residue of secrets too long frozen. Hercule Poirot descended the grand staircase at precisely 8 o'clock, his patent leather shoes leaving no imprint on the thick Aubusson runner. He had slept little. The little grey cells demanded fuel, and the fragment of Sir Reginald's note, "Tonight the truth freezes," had burned behind his eyelids like a magnesium flare. He carried a small leather notebook, its pages already dense with observations. In the entrance hall, Mr. Hawkins stood sentinel beside a silver tray. Coffee, toast, and a single white rose in a crystal bud vase. Clarissa's doing, no doubt. The butler's face was the colour of old parchment, but his hands were steady as he poured. "Bonjour, Monsieur Hawkins. You have not slept." "Servants sleep when the house sleeps, sir. The house has not slept." Hawkins' voice was a dry rustle. "Lady Amelia requests your presence in the morning room. The others are assembling." Poirot nodded, accepting a cup. The coffee was strong, Turkish, exactly as he preferred. He sipped, eyes never leaving the butler's cuff. The ink smudge was gone, laundered overnight, or concealed. The morning room overlooked the rose garden, now a white grave. Heavy brocade curtains had been drawn back, admitting a cold, diffused light that made every face appear bloodless. Lady Amelia sat rigid in a high-backed chair, swathed in black velvet despite the hour. Edgar sprawled on a chaise longue, a cigarette smouldering between his fingers, its smoke curling toward a portrait of his great-grandfather, an admiral whose scowl could curdle milk. Clarissa perched on the window seat, knees drawn to chin, staring at the snow as though it might reveal her father's ghost. Dr. Thorne stood by the fireplace, pipe clenched unlit between his teeth, a medical bag at his feet. Poirot entered without ceremony. "Mesdames, messieurs, we begin. The local constable cannot reach us for days, perhaps a week. Until then, Hercule Poirot is the law." He placed his notebook on the marquetry table with a soft, deliberate thud. "We shall reconstruct the evening, minute par minute. No detail is too trivial. The truth she hides in the crevices." Lady Amelia spoke first, her voice brittle as spun sugar. "Reginald was alive at 11. I passed the study on my way to bed. I heard him humming. Keep the home fires burning. He always hummed when he was angry." Her gloved fingers worried a lace handkerchief. "We had quarrelled at dinner about the will. He intended to disinherit Edgar." Edgar flicked ash onto the Persian rug. "Don't dress it up, mother. He threatened to cut me off without a penny. Again, I was in the billiard room from 10:30 onward. Alone, ask the decanter, it's half empty." His laugh was a bark. "I needed the money, yes, but I didn't need father dead. Not yet." Clarissa's whisper barely disturbed the air. "I walked the corridor at 11:15. I wanted to speak to Papa about a personal matter. The study door was closed. I heard voices, 2 men. One was Papa, the other," she glanced at Dr. Thorne, then away. "I couldn't swear to it." Dr. Thorne removed the pipe, his knuckles white. "I visited Reginald at 10:45. We discussed my research, cryogenic preservation. He had invested, then withdrawn funding. We argued. I left at 11 sharp. The door locked behind me. I heard the bolt shoot. His eyes, pale blue and glacial, met Poirot's. I returned to my room, read until midnight, my monograph on tetraethylammonium compounds. Poirot's moustache twitched. Précisément. A compound that induces rapid hypothermia, non? Crystallizes bodily fluids. Fascinating. He made a note. And you, Mademoiselle Clarissa? What was this personal matter? Colour flooded her cheeks. I wished to marry. Papa disapproved of the gentleman, an artist, no fortune. Her voice cracked. Papa said he would alter the will to spite me too. Hawkins, entering with fresh coffee, interjected. I banked the study fire at 10:15, sir. Sir Reginald was alone, writing. He dismissed me curtly. I retired to the servants' hall. Mrs. Beeton, cook, can vouch. I played cribbage until the scream. Poirot turned to him. And the ink on your cuff, Monsieur Hawkins? The butler did not flinch. Sir Reginald's fountain pen leaked. I blotted a letter for him earlier, nothing more. Poirot's eyes narrowed. He produced the torn scrap from his waistcoat. This was beneath the blotter. The past thaws slowly, but it thaws. Sir Reginald's hand. The postscript. Tonight, the truth freezes. Different ink. Someone added it after he wrote. Someone who knew he would die. Silence fell, thick as the snow outside. The fire popped, spitting a coal onto the hearth. Clarissa jumped. Poirot continued pacing. The room was locked from within. Key on the inside. Window latched, snow undisturbed. Thermometer 72 degrees. Yet Sir Reginald is frozen solid. No external ice. No open window. No refrigerant device. Impossible. Therefore, the impossible must be explained. He stopped before Dr. Thorne. You're missing vial, Docteur. Tetraethylammonium. Enough to kill? Thorne's jaw worked. Enough to lower core temperature 20 degrees in minutes. But the vial is in my laboratory in Leeds. I brought only notes. Nous verrons. Poirot turned to the company. We searched the house. Every room, every drawer, Hawkins, the keys. As they dispersed, Poirot lingered by the window. The snow had begun again, fine as salt. He noticed a faint disturbance in the drift directly below the study. Not footprints, but a shallow depression, as though something heavy had been dragged. The storm would erase it within the hour. In Edgar's room, they found the expected. Empty brandy bottles, racing forms, a drawer stuffed with IOUs totaling $12,000. Tucked beneath was a letter in a feminine hand. Meet me in the conservatory at midnight. Come alone. A. Lady Amelia's stationery. In Clarissa's boudoir, a sketchbook, charcoal studies of a young man with soulful eyes. On the last page, a pressed violet and the words, He will never let us be. Dr. Thorne's travelling case yielded papers, formulas, a photograph of a younger Thorne and Sir Reginald in officers' uniforms, arms slung companionably. On the back, scrawled in red, Traitor. Hawkins' quarters were Spartan, but beneath the mattress lay a medal, the Military Cross, awarded 1916, and a photograph, a woman and 2 boys, all dead in the 18 flu. On the reverse, for King and Country, R.F. profited. Lady Amelia's jewel case contained the expected pearls, but also a second will, unsigned, leaving everything to charity, and a locket with a miniature of Dr. Thorne. Poirot gathered them in the library at noon. The search had yielded a cornucopia of motives, but no murder weapon. The frozen brandy glass had been sent to the makeshift lab in the old dairy. Dr. Thorne's reluctant assistance secured. Mes amis, Poirot began, we have shadows, but no substance. Yet the shadows lengthen. Sir Reginald was writing when he died, pen in hand, ink fresh. The letter he sealed, where is it? Someone took it. Someone who knew its contents would damn them. He held up the postscript fragment. This was written after the scream. The ink is still tacky. Our killer returned to the scene. Clarissa gasped. Edgar crushed his cigarette in a crystal ashtray. Lady Amelia's hand flew to her throat. Poirot's voice dropped to a silken whisper. And the safe, empty. What did it contain that was worth a man's life? Outside, the wind rose to a howl. Somewhere in the house, a door slammed. Footsteps echoed, then ceased. Poirot smiled, but it did not reach his eyes. The past is thawing, mesdames et messieurs, and with it, the ice around a murderer's heart. Chapter 3. The Locked Door Enigma. The study door hung askew on its splintered hinges, a wounded sentinel in the corridor's gloom. Poirot had ordered it left thus, no repairs, no disturbance, until every inch of the chamber had surrendered its secrets. By the cold light of a February noon, filtered through snow-plastered windows, the room looked less like a gentleman's retreat than a stage set for a tragedy in 3 acts. The desk, the corpse, the fire that had watched it all. Sir Reginald Frost still sat upright, a grotesque ice sculpture in evening dress. Frost feathered his lashes. His lips, parted in a silent snarl, were rimed with crystals that caught the gaslight like diamonds. The brandy puddle had frozen into a perfect lens, preserving the ghost of a fingerprint. Dr. Thorne had draped a velvet portiere over the body the night before, but the chill radiating from it was palpable, as though death itself exhaled Arctic air. Poirot stood alone at the threshold, hands clasped behind his back, surveying the tableau with the reverence of a priest entering a cathedral. He had dismissed the others, Hawkins to the kitchen, Lady Amelia to her salts, Edgar to his sulk, Clarissa to her prayers, Dr. Thorne to his reluctant analysis in the dairy. Solitude was the midwife of deduction. He began with the door. Oak, 2 inches thick, iron-bound, the lock a Chubb patent, 1929 model, unpickable without specialist tools. The key remained on the inside, turned to the vertical. Poirot knelt, produced a magnifying lens, and examined the keyhole. No scratches, no wax impressions. The bolt, when he tested it, slid home with a satisfying clunk. From the corridor side, the key was absent. Hawkins had confirmed it hung on a hook in the butler's pantry, unused since the previous summer. "Donk," Poirot murmured, "locked from within. The killer either possessed a second key, impossible, or never left the room." He turned to the window. A single casement, latched with a brass espagnolet bolt. The curtains, heavy damask, hung motionless. Poirot drew them aside. Snow pressed against the panes in a smooth, unbroken sheet. No gap, no melt, no handprint. Below, the drift rose to the sill. He opened the latch. The window resisted, then gave with a crack of ice. Wind rushed in, whipping his moustache. He leaned out. The wall dropped sheer to the courtyard 20 feet below. No ledge, no ivy, no drainpipe. The snow beneath was virgin, save for the shallow drag mark he had noted earlier, now half obliterated by fresh fall. He closed and relatched the window, then measured the distance from sill to desk, 12 feet, 4 inches. Impossible to reach without crossing the rug, which bore no trace of melted snow. The fireplace next. A handsome Adam surround, the grate heaped with ash and half-consumed logs. Poirot donned cotton gloves, raked the embers. Beneath, a twist of paper, charred but legible, betrayal at Ypres, profits in blood. The handwriting matched the postscript fragment. He pocketed it. The desk, mahogany, leather-topped, the blotter frozen stiff. The fountain pen lay uncapped, its nib crusted with ink the colour of dried blood. Poirot lifted the blotter. Beneath, the corner of cream paper, the torn letter. He had already secured the fragment. Now he sought its mate. Nothing. But the inkwell, Waterman's blue-black, held a sediment that glittered. He sniffed, a faint chemical tang, not ink. He decanted a drop onto a glass slide, sealed it in an envelope marked Résidus Analyse. The safe, built into the wainscoting, behind a false panel of books, The Wealth of Nations, Volumes 2 and the 3 swung outward on concealed hinges. The combination lock was open, the door ajar. Inside, empty, save for a single brass key on a red ribbon. Poirot weighed it. Heavy, Yale cut, unlabelled. He slipped it into his waistcoat, footsteps in the corridor. Dr. Thorne entered, medical bag in hand, his face grim. "I've completed the preliminary, Poirot. You won't like it. Parley. Core temperature, -6 degrees Celsius. Rigor mortis absolute. Pupils fixed, corneas opaque. The skin," Thorne hesitated. "It's not frostbite. The epidermis is intact, no blistering. The freezing is internal. Crystallization of intercellular fluid. I've never seen its like outside a laboratory." Poirot's eyes gleamed. "Your tetraethylammonium? Possible, but the dose required, lethal within minutes, and the delivery," Thorne gestured at the frozen brandy. "If ingested, it would act systemically. But the glass held barely an ounce. Not enough. Unless," Poirot said softly, "the brandy was merely the vehicle. The true agent introduced earlier, perhaps in food, perhaps by injection." Thorne paled. "Injection would leave a mark. Cherchez la marque." Together they lifted the portière. Sir Reginald's dinner jacket was unbuttoned, the waistcoat beneath strained over a stomach grown rigid. Thorne rolled up the left sleeve. The antecubital fossa, clean, the right, nothing. Then, beneath the collar, at the base of the neck, a pinprick no larger than a flea bite, surrounded by a bruise the size of a sixpence. Voilà! Poirot's voice was triumphant. A hypodermic, administered while he sat, perhaps as he signed the letter. The killer stood behind him. Here, he positioned himself at the corpse's back, miming the motion. A swift jab, the plunger depressed. Sir Reginald slumps forward. The assassin locks the door, exits. How? Thorne frowned. The key was inside. Poirot's gaze swept the room, settling on the fireplace. The chimney, too narrow, and the fire was lit. Poirot crossed to the bookshelves. His fingers traced the spines. Gibbon, Macaulay, a first edition of Conan Doyle. He paused at a slim volume, The Adventures of Sherlock Holmes. He pulled it. Nothing. Then The Hound of the Baskervilles. A soft click. The entire section swung inward, revealing a narrow passage, its walls rough stone, a spiral stair descending into darkness. Mon Dieu, a priest's hole. From the Reformation, non? Sir Reginald's ancestors were recusants. The passage leads to the wine cellar, Thorne said slowly. I played here as a boy. Reginald showed me. The entrance is behind the coal scuttle. Poirot's smile was thin. The killer entered thus, administered the poison, locked the door, and departed the same way. The key on the inside, a blind. The chimney smoke masked any scent of the passage. Ingenieux. He stepped into the passage. The air was damp, smelling of earth and vintage claret. A single footprint, small, healed, marred the dust. Lady Amelia's size, or Clarissa's. Behind him, Thorne whispered, The safe. What was in it? Documents, doctor. Documents worth a man's life. Poirot held up the brass key. And this opened something else. A strong box, perhaps, or a secret drawer. They emerged in the wine cellar. Racks of dusty bottles, cobwebs like lace. The coal scuttle stood askew, soot on the floor. Poirot knelt, brushed the grate. A scrap of fabric, black silk torn. He sniffed. L'heure bleue, Lady Amelia's perfume. Upstairs, the house stirred. Hawkins's voice echoed, Mr. Poirot, sir. The telephone lines are down, storm damage, and Miss Clarissa, she's missing. Poirot's face hardened. He pocketed the silk scrap. "Vite, we search." They found her in the conservatory, among the frozen palms. Clarissa lay on a wicker chaise, a single white rose clutched to her breast, her lips blue. Not dead, her pulse fluttered, but cold, unnaturally cold. A crystal vial rolled from her lax fingers, empty. Dr. Thorne snatched it. Laudanum and something else. My God, she's been dosed with the same compound. A fraction of the lethal amount. Poirot's voice cut like a scalpel. A warning or a rehearsal. The killer tests the poison and the passage. Clarissa's eyes fluttered open. "The letter, he took it, said Papa's secrets would destroy us all." Poirot leaned close. "Who, ma petite?" Her gaze fixed on the frost patterns on the glass. A shadow from the past. Outside, the storm howled anew, as though the moor itself mourned. Inside, the locked door enigma had cracked, but the darkness beyond yawned wider. Chapter 4. Whispers in the snow had sealed the panes in a thick, opaque crust, turning the tropical greenery into a monochrome jungle. Orchids drooped like hanged men. The fountain in the centre had frozen mid-spurt, a silver plume suspended in time. The air tasted of iron and camphor. Clarissa Frost lay on the wicker chaise as though arranged by a macabre florist. One white rose across her breast, another tucked behind her ear, her lilac gown spread like a shroud. The crystal vial, Dr. Thorne's missing tetraethylammonium, lay on the tessellated floor, its contents already crystallizing into a delicate snowflake of poison. Hercule Poirot knelt, gloved fingers brushing the girl's cheek. Cold, but not corpse cold. Her pulse fluttered beneath the jaw like a trapped moth. "Elle respire." He rose, eyes sweeping the room. "Hawkins, blankets, hot water bottles. Vite, Dr. Thorne, the antidote. Your notes mentioned calcium gluconate?" Thorne was already rummaging in his bag. "Intravenous, if we're in time." His hands shook. The pipe had fallen from his teeth and lay extinguished on the tiles. Lady Amelia burst through the French doors, black velvet swirling like a crow's wing. "Clarissa!" The scream cracked into a sob. She fell to her knees, clutching her daughter's hand. "Who did this? Who?" Edgar followed, hair tousled, eyes bloodshot. "I heard the commotion. Good God!" He stared at the vial, then at Thorne. "That's yours, isn't it? The stuff you were prattling about at dinner." Thorne's reply was a snarl. "Accusations later. Antidote now." Poirot raised a hand. "Silence. The conservatory is a second locked room. The door from the corridor, bolted from within. The garden door, snow against it, undisturbed." Yet Mademoiselle Clarissa did not dose herself. Someone entered, administered the poison, arranged the tableau, and departed. Comment. He circled the chaise. The wicker creaked beneath Clarissa's slight weight. A faint scuff mark on the floor. Heel, narrow, size 5. A woman's shoe or a small man's. Beside it, a single droplet of melted snow, already refreezing into a perfect sphere. Poirot's gaze travelled upward. The glass roof arched 30 feet above, its iron ribs laced with frost. A maintenance ladder, painted the same green as the palms, leaned against the far wall. At its top, a narrow catwalk circled the dome. Snow had sifted through a broken pane high above, dusting the iron like sugar. He climbed. The ladder groaned but held. At the catwalk, he found what he sought. A silk scarf, black monogrammed AF, snagged on a bolt, Lady Amelia's, and beneath it a smear of crimson lipstick on the railing. Down below, Thorne had the syringe ready. Calcium gluconate glinted like liquid sunlight. He slid the needle into Clarissa's vein with the precision of long practice. Colour crept back into her lips. Poirot descended. The killer climbed the ladder, crossed the catwalk, lowered a thread or wire, perhaps fishing line, to dangle the vial. Mademoiselle Clarissa, trusting, drank. The scarf was a blind, left to implicate Lady Amelia. But the lipstick, he produced a handkerchief, dabbing the smear. Rouge Baiser, shade Midnight Sin. Mademoiselle Clarissa's colour. The killer borrowed it. Clarissa's eyes fluttered open. A voice from above, like Papa's, but wrong, said to drink or the secrets would destroy us all. Lady Amelia wept. Secrets? What secrets? Poirot's voice was soft steel. We shall ask the house. He led them on a procession through Frost Manor's arteries, corridors panelled in oak, staircases that twisted like DNA. They began in the wine cellar, where the priest's hole exhaled damp breath. The coal scuttle had been righted, but soot still clung to the flagstones. Poirot knelt, brushing it aside. Beneath, a brass button, military issue, 1916, a regimental crest, Thorne's old unit. Upstairs, in Sir Reginald's dressing room, they found the strong box the brass key opened. Inside, a dossier bound in red ribbon. Wartime telegrams, ledgers, a photograph of a pike-burning village, scrawled across it, Ypres, profits in blood. And a letter, unsigned. You sold the coordinates, 1,200 men, my brother among them, payment due. Hawkins, trailing behind, went ashen. That's my handwriting. Sir Reginald dictated it years ago. For the War Office, he kept a copy. Edgar snatched the photograph. Father profited from shell contracts, everyone knew. No. Poirot tapped the ledger. He profited from false intelligence, sold dude coordinates to the Germans, then supplied the shells that wiped out our own trenches. A fortune in blood money. Lady Amelia swayed. He told me it was a misunderstanding, a clerical error. Clarissa, supported by Thorne, whispered, Papa said the past was buried, but it kept digging. They moved to the long gallery. Portraits glared down. Poirot paused before a painting of Sir Reginald in uniform, 1915. The eyes had been gouged out with a palette knife. Fresh damage, paint still tacky. In the billiard room, Edgar's domain, they found the cue he had used to break the study door. Its tip was splintered, but beneath the ferrule, a trace of the same chemical residue from the inkwell. Poirot assembled them in the library at dusk. The fire had been laid but not lit. The room smelled of cold paper and older sins. Mes amis, he began, we have 3 tableaux. The study, the conservatory, the gallery, each a locked room, each a message. The killer moves through the house like a ghost, because the house is complicit. Passages, catwalks, dumbwaiters. Frost Manor is a puzzle box. He produced the brass button. Dr. Thorne, your regiment. You knew the priest's hole from boyhood. Thorne's face was stone. I was in my room. Poirot held up the silk scarf. Lady Amelia, your perfume, but the lipstick, Clarissa's. Lady Amelia's hand flew to her throat. I lost that scarf days ago. Poirot turned to Clarissa. And you, ma petite, borrowed your mother's scarf to meet a lover in the conservatory, the artist? Clarissa nodded, tears spilling. He never came. I waited. Then the voice. Edgar laughed bitterly. So we're all liars. What now, Poirot? Draw lots for the noose? Poirot's smile was winter itself. No, we draw truth. Tonight we reconstruct the crime. Every soul in its place. The killer will betray himself or herself in the repetition. He rang the bell. Hawkins appeared, candle in hand. Sir, prepare the study, the fire, the brandy, the letter. We reenact the midnight hour. And Hawkins, Poirot's eyes glittered. Bring the dumbwaiter key, the one that serves the master bedroom. Hawkins hesitated, then bowed. At once, sir. As the house settled into uneasy quiet, Poirot stood alone by the library window. Snow had begun again, soft as ash. Somewhere in the walls, a pipe groaned like a dying man. He opened his notebook. A new entry in his precise hand. The house remembers. The killer forgets. Outside, the wind whispered a name. Chapter 5. The Chemical Deception. The dairy had been converted into a makeshift laboratory. White tiles, a Bunsen burner hissing beneath a retort, the faint smell of ether and fear. Dr. Mortimer Thorne stood over the bench, sleeves rolled high, a pipette trembling between his fingers. The frozen brandy glass, now thawed, sat in a porcelain dish, its contents reduced to a cloudy syrup. Hercule Poirot watched from the doorway, hands clasped behind his back, the gaslight catching the silver of his hair. The house beyond was silent save for the wind's low moan. The others had been dismissed to their rooms with strict orders. No wandering, no whispering, no brandy. Thorne did not look up. "It's not tetraethylammonium." His voice was hoarse. "Close cousin, diethylmethylammonium iodide. Military issue, 1917. Induces paralysis, then flash freezing of tissues. 1 cubic centimetre in the carotid. Death in 90 seconds. Poirot stepped closer. "And the delivery? Micro-syringe, glass, spring-loaded. Fits in a cigarette case." Thorne gestured to a rack of test tubes. "I synthesized a batch for the War Office. Nerve agents. Reginald signed the contract. Then buried the trials when the side effects surfaced." Side effects? Subjects froze from the inside out. Looked like frostbite. No autopsy could prove poison. Thorne's laugh was bitter. "Perfect for quiet assassinations. He kept a sample, locked in the safe." Poirot produced the brass key. "This?" Thorne's eyes widened. "The strongbox in his dressing room. I thought it lost. Non, found. Empty." Poirot tapped the bench. The killer took the syringe, used the priest's hole, injected Sir Reginald as he wrote. Then he mimed the motion. A twist of the wrist, the bolt shot from inside, the panel closing. "Parfait!" Thorne wiped his brow. "There's an antidote. Atropine and heat. Clarissa will live." Poirot's gaze sharpened. "You knew the compound?" "I invented it." Thorne met his eyes. "But I didn't use it." A pause. The burner popped. Poirot turned to leave. "We shall see." Upstairs, the reconstruction began at 11:30 precisely. The study had been restored. Fire blazing, desk lamp glowing, a fresh decanter of brandy, untouched, beside a blank sheet of cream paper. Sir Reginald's chair was occupied by a tailor's dummy in evening dress, its wax head tilted forward in grotesque mimicry. Poirot directed like a stage manager. "Lady Amelia, your position at 11, Edgar Billiards, Clarissa, corridor. Dr. Thorne, your room, Hawkins, servants' hall." They obeyed, moving through the house like actors in a passion play. Poirot himself took the priest's hole, lantern in hand. The passage was narrower than memory, the air thick with coal dust and the ghosts of Catholic martyrs. At 11:47, he emerged behind the coal scuttle. The study was empty, the dummy motionless. He crossed to the desk, uncapped the fountain pen, and wrote a single line in Sir Reginald's bold hand. "The past thaws slowly." Then, from his waistcoat, he produced the micro-syringe, found minutes earlier in Thorne's medical bag, hidden beneath a false bottom. He pressed it to the dummy's neck. Click. A bead of saline, harmless, oozed out. He locked the door from inside, shot the bolt, and returned through the passage. In the corridor, he waited. At 11:52, a floorboard creaked. Clarissa appeared, barefoot in her nightgown, eyes wide. "I heard Papa." Poirot stepped from the shadows. "Non, ma petite, you heard the wind. Return to bed." She fled. At 11:58, Another sound, the soft snick of the dumbwaiter in the master bedroom. Poirot glided upstairs. The dumbwaiter door hung open. Inside, a woman's kid glove, monogrammed AF, and a single white rose, frozen solid. Midnight. The household assembled in the long gallery, the dummy now centre stage, a sheet draped over its frozen form. Poirot stood before the fireplace, the micro-syringe in one hand, the brass key in the other. Mesdames, messieurs, the deception is complete. The killer used the house itself, passages, dumbwaiters, catwalks, but the chemical was the masterpiece. He turned to Thorne. You claimed the syringe was lost, yet here it is from your bag. Thorne's face was grey. I kept it as a reminder, a warning, no, a weapon. Poirot held up the frozen rose. Found in the dumbwaiter, delivered to Clarissa as she slept, lowered on a thread, the poison tipped into her mouth, a test to see if the dose would kill silently. Lady Amelia gasped. You accuse him. Poirot's eyes swept the room. I accuse Patton. The killer needed 3 things: knowledge of the poison, access to the passage, and a motive rooted in 1917. He opened the dossier from the strongbox. Ypres, October 14th. A trench coordinate sold to the Germans. 200 men lost. Dr. Thorne's brother among them. Sir Reginald's signature on the contract. Thorne lunged. He sold us! For steel shares! Hawkins caught his arm. Easy, sir. Poirot continued, relentless. But the killer is not content with one death. Clarissa was a warning. The next target, he looked at Lady Amelia. You, madame. The dumbwaiter serves your room. The glove is yours. The rose, Clarissa's signature. The killer frames mother and daughter to deflect from himself. Edgar laughed shrill. So it's Thorne. Hang him and be done. Poirot shook his head. None. Dr. Thorne is a chemist, yes, but the footprints in the priest's hole. Size 5, a woman's or a slight man's. He turned to Hawkins. You, monsieur, you knew the passages from boyhood. Your brother died at Ypres. The medal in your room, the military cross, awarded for saving Sir Reginald's life, a debt repaid in blood. Hawkins did not flinch. I served the family. Loyalty is my creed. Poirot's voice softened. Loyalty or guilt? You blotted Sir Reginald's letter. You knew its contents. You locked the door from inside, using the duplicate key from the pantry. You planted the syringe in Dr. Thorne's bag. The frozen rose in the dumbwaiter. Your touch to implicate the women. Silence. The fire crackled. Hawkins's shoulders sagged. He ruined us. My brother begged for shells that never came. I waited 17 years. The poison, I took it from the safe months ago, when he threatened to expose me for stealing silver to pay debts. Lady Amelia whispered, You. Hawkins met her gaze. I locked the door. I watched him freeze. Then I returned through the passage to add the postscript. Tonight, the truth freezes. My truth. Poirot sighed. Mais non. The postscript ink is fresh. Written after the scream. You returned too soon. The brandy residue. Your fingerprint, not Sir Reginald's. Hawkins smiled, thin and terrible. Then arrest me, Monsieur Poirot. The storm will bury the evidence. Poirot produced handcuffs, borrowed from the village constable's kit, left in the hall. The storm thaws, monsieur, as does justice. Click. As Hawkins was led away, Clarissa stirred on the chaise, colour returning. Thorne knelt beside her, murmuring apologies. Lady Amelia stood alone, the frozen rose crumbling in her hand. Poirot closed his notebook. Outside the wind dropped. A single flake drifted past the window, then another. The blizzard was ending. The chemical deception was complete, but the house still whispered. Chapter 6. Alibis Unravelled. Gas sconces hissed, throwing long shadows across the parquet. The chandelier above trembled as though the house itself held its breath. The dummy in evening dress, Sir Reginald's effigy, sat propped in a wing chair, its wax face glistening with thawed frost. A single white rose, now limp and brown, lay on the blotter before it. Hercule Poirot stood at the head of the table, a small black notebook open like a missile. The others formed a ragged semicircle. Lady Amelia, rigid in black bombazine. Edgar tie askew, brandy flask glinting in his pocket. Clarissa, wrapped in blankets, eyes huge. Dr. Thorne, pipe cold between his teeth. Mr. Hawkins, wrists in Poirot's borrowed cuffs, face carved from granite. Outside, the storm had slackened to a petulant whine. Snow slid from the eaves in wet avalanches. Dawn was only hours away, and with it, the world. Poirot's voice cut the hush. "Mesdames, messieurs, we have a confession, mais non. Monsieur Hawkins admits the motive, the poison, the passage, yet the little grey cells, they revolt. The timing is imprécis. The postscript ink, wet when I found it at 0017. Hawkins was in the servants' hall from 2350, playing cribbage with Mrs. Beeton. She swears to it. He could not return to the study, write, and rejoin the game unseen. Donk, a second hand. Yodesh turned to the page. We reconstruct encore, but this time the alibis bleed. Lady Amelia claimed the master bedroom. Poirot had stationed a footman, borrowed from the village before the storm, at her door. The man swore no one entered or left. Yet the dumbwaiter shaft, accessed from the linen cupboard, yawned open. A silk cord, lady's stocking size small, dangled inside, knotted every 6 inches. Long enough to lower a vial from the floor above. Edgar, in the billiard room. The baize was marked with chalk, 3 games solitary, but the cue rack held a gap, the number 4 cue missing. Found later in the conservatory, its tip stained with the same diethylmethylammonium residue. Edgar's fingerprints absent, wiped clean. Clarissa in the corridor. She had spoken true, a shadow near the study door, but the shadow wore her lilac scarf, stolen from her room earlier, returned with a pinprick tear. The artist's sketchbook, recovered from the conservatory, now held a new page. A charcoal study of Sir Reginald, throat slashed in red conte. The paper was fresh, the charcoal smudged, drawn after midnight. Dr. Thorne in his room. His monograph lay open to page 47, cryogenic paralysis in mammalian tissue. A margin note in his hand. RF refuses funding, again, but the ink was blue. The postscript in the study was black. 2 pens, 2 writers. Hawkins in the servants' hall. Mrs. Beeton confirmed the cribbage. Yet the dumbwaiter bell, connected to the master bedroom, rang once at 11:57. Hawkins answered it, returned with a tray, empty brandy glass, lipstick smear. Man's shade. Poirot closed the notebook. Voyez-vous, the alibis are a cat's cradle. Each thread pulls another. The killer needed 2 pairs of hands, one to inject, one to write, one to freeze the body, one to freeze the truth. He turned to Thorne. You synthesized the poison, but you did not administer it. To Hawkins, you knew the passages, but you did not return. To Lady Amelia, you lowered the vial to Clarissa, but you did not climb the catwalk. To Edgar, you wiped the cue, but you did not draw the charcoal. To Clarissa, you heard the shadow, but you were the shadow. Clarissa's breath hitched. No! Poirot's voice was gentle. Ma petite, the lilac scarf, torn by the catwalk bolt, the lipstick on the railing, your shade, the sketchbook, your hand. You wanted Papa's blessing for your artist. He refused. You confronted him at 11:50. He turned his back, writing the letter. You took the syringe from Dr. Thorne's bag earlier, when you brought him tea. 1 jab. He slumped. You locked the door, fled through the priest's hole. But you needed the letter, proof of the will change. You returned at 00:15 via the dumbwaiter from your mother's room. Added the postscript. Tonight, the truth freezes. Your truth? Clarissa's sob was a broken bell. He said I'd marry a title, or not at all. I only wanted to scare him, make him ill. The vial said non-lethal. Dr. Thorne's label, Thorne lunged. I never labelled it. You stole the lethal batch. Poirot raised a hand. Assay. The second pair of hands, Lady Amelia. You heard the struggle through the dumbwaiter shaft. You lowered the frozen rose to silence Clarissa, your daughter, before she confessed. The stocking cord, yours. The glove, yours. You protected the family name. Lady Amelia's face crumpled. She's all I have. Edgar laughed wild. So the women did it. Hang the pair. Poirot shook his head. Non. The injection required strength. Clarissa's wrist is bird-boned. The charcoal sketch, left-handed. Clarissa is right-handed. He turned to the dummy. Regardez. He lifted the wax head. Beneath the collar, a second pinprick, lower, at the trapezius. The killing dose, administered after Clarissa's feeble attempt, by one who knew anatomy. Thorne's pipe clattered to the floor. Vous, docteur. You entered at 11:55, via the priest's hole, your boyhood route. Clarissa had fled. Sir Reginald still breathed, paralysed, freezing. You finished him, took the letter, returned to your room by 00:05. Then, at 00:15, you sent Clarissa back, via the dumbwaiter, to add the postscript, a perfect frame, the hysterical daughter. Thorne's voice was a whisper. He ruined my brother, my work, my life. Poirot produced the missing letter, found in Thorne's monograph, pressed between pages. Payment due, your handwriting, the postscript yours, the charcoal, Clarissa's, but guided by your threat. Clarissa wept. He said he'd tell the police I killed Papa if I didn't. Lady Amelia stepped forward. Take me, not her. Poirot's eyes were sad. Madame, the law is not a bargain. He signalled Hawkins, who, uncuffed now, stood guard. Arrest Dr. Thorne and Mademoiselle Clarissa. Accessory, Lady Amelia, conspiracy. As Thorne was led away, he turned. The storm ends, Poirot, but the cold, it stays. Poirot closed his notebook. No, the cold thaws with truth. Outside, the first pale blade of dawn sliced the horizon. The snow had stopped. The alibis were unravelled, but the house still held its breath. Chapter 7. The Wartime Shadow. Dawn had clawed its way through the stained-glass oriel, painting the turkey rugs in blood and gold. The fire, banked overnight, now roared again, Hawkins doing, casting heat that felt obscene against the lingering chill of murder. Hercule Poirot stood before the marble mantel, the red-ribbon dossier open like a gutted fish. Pages of wartime telegrams fluttered in the draft, coordinates, shell consignments, casualty lists. At the centre, a single photograph, Sir Reginald Frost, 20 years younger. Arms slung around a grinning lieutenant, whose face had been scratched out with a compass point. On the reverse, in Thorne's youthful hand, to my brother-in-arms, R.F., the household sat in a ragged circle. Dr. Thorne, wrists recuffed, stared at the carpet as though it might open and swallow him. Clarissa, wrapped in shawls, wept silently into her mother's lap. Lady Amelia's face was porcelain, cracked but unbroken. Edgar nursed a fresh brandy, his fourth. Hawkins stood behind Poirot, ramrod straight, the perfect servant, except for the tremor in his left hand. Poirot's voice was soft, almost conversational. Mes amis, we have chased shadows through passages and dumbwaiters, but the true ghost is here. He tapped the dossier. October 14th, 1917, the Third Battle of Ypres, a trench line codenamed Frost Line. Coordinates sold to German intelligence for $50,000. The shells that followed, frost steel shells, landed on British heads, 1,247 dead, among them Lieutenant Edward Thorne, age 23. Thorne's head snapped up. My brother begged for ammunition. Reginald sent blanks, then billed the War Office for live rounds. Poirot turned a page. The money was laundered through a Swiss account. Signatory, R. Frost. The contract for the poison, diethylmethylammonium, was the final insult. A weapon to silence whistleblowers. You, docteur, were to test it on deserters. Thorne's laugh was a dry husk. He called it patriotic efficiency. Lady Amelia's voice was a thread. Reginald said it was a mistake, a clerical error. Non, madame. Poirot produced a ledger. Here, Frost Steel profits tripled in 1918. Blood money. Clarissa lifted her head. Papa kept the photograph in the safe. Said it reminded him of necessary sacrifices. Edgar drained his glass. Necessary for his bank balance. Poirot closed the dossier. The past does not lie quiet. It digs. Dr. Thorne dug for 17 years. He came to Frost Manor not as a guest but as an executioner. The syringe, the passage, the postscript, all his. But he needed accomplices. Fear is a sharp tool. He turned to Clarissa. You, ma petite, were the bait. Your forbidden love. The artist was a lever. Thorne threatened to expose him as a conscientious objector unless you stole the syringe. Clarissa's sob was a broken hinge. He said Papa would disown me anyway. I only wanted to make him ill, force him to listen. Poirot's gaze shifted to Lady Amelia. And you, madame, heard the struggle through the dumbwaiter. You lowered the frozen rose to silence your daughter, then planted your own glove to deflect suspicion. A mother's love, twisted into complicity. Lady Amelia's chin lifted. I protected my child. Oui, and Dr. Thorne protected his vengeance. Poirot faced the doctor. You entered at 11:55, Clarissa had fled. Sir Reginald still breathed, paralyzed. You finished him with the lethal dose, took the letter, returned to your room. Then, at 0:15, you sent Clarissa back to add the postscript. Tonight, the truth freezes. Your signature. Thorne's eyes were ice. He froze my brother's heart. I froze his. Hawkins spoke for the first time, voice rough. And me, sir? You suspected me. Poirot's smile was sad. You, monsieur, were the perfect red herring. The military cross, the medal, the ink on your cuff, all planted by Thorne. He knew your grudge. Your brother died in the same barrage. He framed you to muddy the waters. Hawkins's shoulders sagged. I hated him, but I never touched him. Poirot nodded. Exactement. The footprints in the priest's hole, size 5, but the tread was a man's brogue, doctored with a woman's heel. Thorne's shoes, Clarissa's scarf, a pantomime. He opened his notebook. The final piece, the charcoal sketch. Clarissa drew it, yes, but under duress. The red conte was Thorne's blood, pricked from his own finger to seal the threat. Clarissa shuddered. He made me sign it, said it was insurance. Poirot closed the book. Assez. The wartime shadow has devoured its host. Dr. Thorne, you are under arrest for murder. Mademoiselle Clarissa, accessory after the fact. Lady Amelia, conspiracy to pervert justice. Thorne stood, cuffs clinking. The storm ends, Poirot, but the cold, it stays. Poirot's eyes were winter itself. Non. The cold thaws with truth. They moved to the study for the final reconstruction. The room was warm now, the fire a cheerful liar. The dummy had been removed. Sir Reginald's chair sat empty, a silent accuser. Poirot positioned them, Thorne behind the desk, syringe in hand, Clarissa at the priest's hole panel, Lady Amelia at the dumbwaiter hatch. Action. Thorne mimed the jab. Clarissa fled, scarf fluttering. Lady Amelia lowered the rose on its silk cord. Hawkins watched from the doorway, face carved from grief. Poirot narrated. 11:50, Clarissa confronts. 11:52, paralysis. 11:55, Thorn enters, finishes. Zerdijero, 15. Clarissa returns, writes. Zerdijero, 17. Lady Amelia silences. Parfait. He produced the missing letter. Found in Thorn's pipe. Rolled tight. Payment due in blood. Your final note, Docteur. Hidden in plain sight. Thorn's defiance cracked. He laughed at Edward's grave. Said war is business. Poirot's voice was gentle. And you made it personal, but murder is not justice. Outside, the sun rose fully, gilding the snow. Footprints, real ones, led from the manor to the gate. The village constable's sleigh approached, bells jingling. Poirot turned to the family. The shadow lifts, live with the light. Clarissa reached for her mother's hand. Lady Amelia took it. Edgar set down his glass, empty. Hawkins opened the front door, letting in a blast of clean, cold air. The wartime shadow dissolved in the thaw, but the house remembered. Chapter 8. False trails converge. In its place, a brittle silence, the kind that follows a battlefield when the guns stop and the wounded begin to moan. Frost Manor stood in the pale glare of a winter sun, every icicle a dagger, every footprint a confession. The village constable's sleigh had arrived at 07:15. 2 burly men in blue serge, breath pluming, eyes wide at the tableau of wealth and ruin. Hercule Poirot met them in the entrance hall, notebook in hand, moustache immaculate despite the sleepless night. Behind him, the suspects waited like chess pieces after checkmate. Dr. Thorne in cuffs, Clarissa clinging to her mother, Lady Amelia straight-backed but hollow-eyed, Edgar swaying slightly. Hawkins at attention with the dignity of a condemned man who has chosen silence. Poirot addressed the sergeant. Messieurs, you come for 3 prisoners. But first, the final act. The false trails must converge, or justice stumbles. He led them to the long gallery. The dummy had been replaced by Sir Reginald's actual body, now thawed, rigid in a plain pine box on trestles, the undertaker's wagon waiting outside. A white sheet covered the horror, but the outline beneath was unmistakable, a king dethroned by chemistry. Poirot lifted the sheet. The pinpricks at neck and trapezius were livid now, the surrounding skin mottled purple. Regardez! 2 injections, the first Clarissa's, paralytic but non-lethal. The second, Thorne's, diethylmethylammonium, full dose, a duet of death. He turned to the assembly. Mes amis, we have chased phantoms. The priest's hole, the catwalk, the dumbwaiter. Each a false trail, laid by a master of misdirection. But trails converge at the truth. Poirot opened the panel behind the coal scuttle. Dust motes danced in the shaft of light. Size 5 footprints, but examine the tread. He held up Thorne's brogue, sole freshly carved with a woman's heel pattern, the leather still bearing flecks of Clarissa's lilac scarf. A costume. Thorne wore it to implicate the women. Clarissa gasped. He made me tear the scarf. Said it was for luck. In the conservatory, the maintenance ladder stood where it had fallen. Poirot climbed, retrieved the monogrammed scarf, AF, and the lipstick-smeared railing. Lady Amelia's scarf, Clarissa's lipstick. But the climber left a boot print on the iron, size 9, military tread. Thorne again. Lady Amelia's voice was a whisper. I thought it was Clarissa. The linen cupboard revealed the silk stocking cord, knotted every 6 inches. Poirot measured it against Lady Amelia's arm. Too short. You lowered the rose, oui, but only after Thorne had primed the vial. He climbed the shaft from the wine cellar, left the glove to frame you. Edgar snorted. Clever bastard! Clarissa's sketchbook lay open on the billiard table. The violent portrait of Sir Reginald, throat slashed in red conte, was signed CF, but Poirot turned the page. Beneath, in microscopic script, "Do this, or the artist dies. MT." Clarissa's tears fell onto the paper, blurring the ink. "He said Papa would ruin Julian's career. I had no choice." Poirot produced the torn letter fragment. "Tonight, the truth freezes." Thorne's hand, but the ink. Parker Quink, black. Sir Reginald used blue. The pen on the desk was swapped after death. Thorne returned at 0017, wrote the line, planted the syringe in his own bag to feign discovery. Thorne's laugh was hollow. A gamble, but you saw through it. Poirot gathered the trails like reins. Voyez-vous? Each path circles back to one man. Dr. Thorne orchestrated the symphony. Clarissa as reluctant violin, Lady Amelia as mute cello, Hawkins as the drumbeat of misdirection. The wartime betrayal was the score, but the poison was the crescendo. He opened the dossier one last time. A final document, sealed until now. A death certificate, Edward Thorne, Latourgue, died 14 Torsdag in 1917, caused friendly fire. Stamped approved, R. Frost, captured. Thorne lunged, cuffs rattling. He signed it, said it was collateral efficiency. Hawkins caught him. "Enough, sir." Poirot's voice was steel. "Assez. The false trails converge here." He placed the microsyringe on the table beside the death certificate. "The weapon and the warrant. Dr. Mortimer Thorne, you are charged with murder. Mademoiselle Clarissa Frost, accessory. Lady Amelia Frost, conspiracy." The sergeant stepped forward, notebook ready. "Anything to say, sir?" Thorne's eyes met Poirot's. "Only that the cold was justice." Poirot shook his head. "Non, the cold was cowardice. True justice thaws." They moved to the study for the denouement. The room was stripped now. Desk bare, safe open and empty, the priest's whole panel propped aside. Poirot positioned them one last time. "Action!" Thorne entered through the passage, syringe raised. Clarissa followed, trembling. Lady Amelia watched from the dumbwaiter hatch. Hawkins stood guard. Poirot narrated, 11:50. Clarissa injects, flees. 11:55. Thorne finishes. 00:15. Clarissa returns, writes under duress. 00:17. Lady Amelia lowers the rose. Fin. He produced the final piece, a brass button from the priest's hole, regimental crest. Thorne's spare, dropped in haste, the convergence. The constable snapped cuffs on Thorne. Clarissa sobbed as a policewoman led her away. Lady Amelia walked out alone, head high. Edgar followed, flask empty, eyes hollow. Hawkins lingered. "And me, sir?" Poirot placed a hand on his shoulder. "You, monsieur, were the only innocent. The medal in your room, planted, the ink on your cuff, thorns. You served truth, even in silence." Hawkins's eyes glistened. 30 years, sir, for a lie." Poirot's smile was gentle. "Now you serve the truth. Open the doors. Let the light in." Hawkins obeyed. Sunlight flooded the hall, melting the last icicles. The pine box was carried out, the undertaker's wagon creaking away. Poirot stood alone in the study, notebook closed. The false trails had converged. The house exhaled. Chapter 9. The Final. Deduction. The drawing room had never looked smaller. Sunlight, thin and merciless, poured through the tall windows, exposing every crack in the plaster, every frayed thread in the aubusson. The great chandelier, unlit for the first time in memory, hung like a frozen waterfall. The air smelled of melted wax, cold coffee, and the copper tang of truth. Hercule Poirot stood at the centre of the parquet, a small figure in perfect black, hands clasped behind his back. Before him, the suspect sat in a semicircle of gilt chairs dragged in from the dining room. No one spoke. Even the wind had died. Dr. Mortimer Thorne occupied the middle chair, wrists cuffed to the armrests, his face a mask of exhaustion and defiance. To his left, Clarissa, shawl slipping from her shoulders, eyes red-rimmed. To his right, Lady Amelia, spine straight, gloved hands folded as if in prayer. Edgar leaned against the mantel, brandy forgotten. Hawkins stood behind Poirot, the perfect sentinel. 2 constables flanked the double doors. The pine box waited in the hall. The undertaker's wagon idled outside. Poirot opened his notebook with a soft snap. "Mesdames, Messieurs, the hour of the little grey cells has arrived. We have followed false trails. Priest's hole, catwalk, dumbwaiter, charcoal, postscript. Each a breadcrumb leading nowhere. But breadcrumbs form a path when viewed from above." He turned to Thorn. "Docteur, you are the architect. You built the maze, but every maze has a centre." Thorn's lip curled. "And you found it, little man?" "Oui." Poirot produced the micro-syringe, encased in glass. "The weapon, your invention, stolen from your Leeds laboratory 6 weeks ago. Insurance records confirm. You brought it here in your medical bag, hidden beneath the false bottom." He laid the syringe on the table. Next, the torn letter fragment. "Tonight, the truth freezes. Your hand, your ink, written at 0017 after the scream. You returned via the priest's hole, added the line, planted the syringe in your own bag to feign discovery." Clarissa whimpered. "He made me." Poirot raised a hand. "Patience, ma petite. Your role was the opening chord. At 11:50, you confronted your father. He refused your artist. You took the syringe, labelled non-lethal by Thorn's lie, and injected a paralytic dose. You fled, believing him merely unconscious." He turned to Lady Amelia. "You heard the struggle through the dumbwaiter shaft. At Zuadirbrok 10, you lowered the frozen rose, your glove, your stocking cord, to silence Clarissa before she confessed. A mother's instinct perverted." Lady Amelia's voice was ash. "I thought to protect her." Poirot nodded. "Mais oui, protection is the oldest motive." He faced Thorn again. "At 11:55 you entered. Sir Reginald still breathed, paralysed, freezing. You administered the lethal dose, took the letter, proof of the will change, and the wartime dossier. Returned to your room by 00:05. Then, at 00:15, you sent Clarissa back to add the postscript. 'Tonight, the truth freezes. Your signature.'" Thorn's eyes glittered. "And the proof?" Poirot smiled. "Abundant." He produced the brass button from the priest's hole. "Your spare. Regimental crest, dropped in haste." Next, the charcoal sketch. Clarissa's hand, but the red conte. Your blood pricked to seal the threat. Then the boot print on the catwalk. Size 9, military tread. Your shoes doctored with a woman's heel. Finally, the death certificate from the dossier. Edward Thorn, died 14 Octodile 1917, caused friendly fire. Approved, R. Frost, your brother, your motive. Thorn's defiance cracked. He laughed at the grave, said war is business, I made it personal. Poirot's voice was gentle. No, you made it murder. He turned to the room. The false trails were brilliant. The priest's whole footprints, Thorn in disguise, the catwalk scarf, planted, the dumbwaiter rose, Lady Amelia's touch, but Thorn's poison, the charcoal, Clarissa's fear, the postscript, Thorn's flourish, all to obscure the centre, a wartime betrayal, avenged in a locked room. Clarissa stood, trembling. I didn't mean to kill him, I only wanted him to listen. Poirot's eyes softened. Ma petite, intent is not innocence. You opened the door. Thorn walked through. Lady Amelia rose. Take me, not her. Poirot shook his head. Madame, the law is not a bargain. Edgar laughed, bitter. So the doctor's the villain, and we're the fools. Poirot's gaze swept them. No, you are the survivors. The house, the storm, the poison, they were the stage. You played your parts. Now the curtain falls. He signalled the constables. Dr. Thorne, murder. Mademoiselle Clarissa, accessory. Lady Amelia, conspiracy. As Thorne was led away, he turned. The cold stays, Poirot. Poirot's reply was a whisper. Non, the cold thaws with truth. They moved to the study for the final tableau. The room was stripped bare. Desk empty, safe open, priest's hole panel propped aside. Poirot positioned them one last time. Action. Thorne entered through the passage, syringe raised. Clarissa followed, trembling. Lady Amelia watched from the dumbwaiter hatch. Hawkins stood guard. Poirot narrated, 11:50, Clarissa injects, flees. 11:55, Thorne finishes. 00:15, Clarissa returns, writes. 00:17, Lady Amelia lowers the rose. Fin. He produced the final piece, a brass key from the safe, unlabelled. This opens the strongbox in Thorne's Leeds laboratory. Inside, the original formula, the Swiss bank records, the death certificate duplicate, the centre of the maze. The constable snapped cuffs on Thorne. Clarissa sobbed as a policewoman led her away. Lady Amelia walked out alone, head high. Edgar followed, flask empty. Hawkins lingered. And me, sir? Poirot placed a hand on his shoulder. You, monsieur, were the only innocent. The medal, the ink, planted. You served truth, even in silence. Hawkins's eyes glistened. 30 years, sir, for a lie. Poirot's smile was gentle. Now you serve the truth. Open the doors. Let the light in. Hawkins obeyed. Sunlight flooded the hall, melting the last icicles. The pine box was carried out, the wagon creaking away. Poirot stood alone in the study, notebook closed. The final deduction was complete. The house exhaled. Chapter 10. Thaw of Justice. The sun was high now, a white coin in a washed-out sky. Snow slid from the eaves in heavy wet slabs, thudding onto the gravel like the slow heartbeat of a dying giant. Frost Manor's windows, once sealed in ice, stood open, curtains billowing like surrender flags. The air carried the clean mineral scent of thaw, earth, pine, and the faint sweetness of decay. Hercule Poirot stood on the front steps, coat buttoned to the throat, valise at his feet. The village constable's sleigh waited at the foot of the drive, horses stamping, breath pluming. The pine box had already gone, Sir Reginald Frost on his final journey to the churchyard at Haworth, where the Brontes slept and the wind never ceased. Behind Poirot, the household emerged one by one, as if the house itself were exhaling them. Lady Amelia first. She wore mourning black, but the veil was lifted, her face was pale, composed, the silver eyes dry. She carried a small portmanteau, nothing more. The constable's wife would accompany her to the station. A cell in York awaited. Conspiracy to pervert justice. 5 years, perhaps 3 with good behaviour. She paused beside Poirot. You were merciful, monsieur. Her voice was low, steady. You could have painted me the villain. Poirot inclined his head. Madame, mercy is not mine to give, only truth. You shielded your child. The law understands, even if it cannot forgive. She touched his sleeve, gloved fingers trembling just once. Tell Clarissa, tell her I chose this, that love is not always soft. Poirot nodded. Elle saura. Lady Amelia descended the steps, the gravel crunching beneath her heels like breaking ice. Clarissa followed, flanked by a policewoman. The girl had changed into a simple grey dress, her hair braided tight. The shawls were gone. The cold no longer touched her. She stopped before Poirot, eyes lowered. I thought I was saving Julian, she whispered. I thought Papa would wake and listen. Poirot's voice was gentle. Ma petite, the road to ruin is paved with good intentions, but you are young. Time thaws, even stone hearts. She lifted her gaze. Will they hang Dr. Thorne? No. Transportation, perhaps, or Broadmoor. The poison was unusual. The courts will debate. Clarissa's lips trembled. He said the war made monsters of us all. Poirot placed a hand on her shoulder. Oui, but monsters can be caged. Go now. Write to your mother. Write to your artist. Begin again. The policewoman led her away. Clarissa did not look back. Edgar came next, coat unbuttoned, tie askew, a fresh flask in his pocket. He had shaved badly, and the nick on his chin bled a single red bead. "Well, Poirot," he said, voice rough with brandy and sleeplessness, "the heir survives, debts and all." Poirot's moustache twitched. "Monsieur, the estate is entailed. The debts will be paid, but the title is yours now. Use it wisely." Edgar laughed, a sound like breaking glass. "Wisely? I'm the last frost. The mills, the manor, the ghosts, I'll sell the lot. Start fresh in Monte Carlo." Poirot's eyes narrowed. "No, sell the mills, oui, but the manor, keep it. A house remembers. Let it remember redemption." Edgar shrugged, but the flask stayed in his pocket. He descended the steps, paused beside the sleigh, and for a moment looked almost sober. "Tell Hawkins. Tell him the wine cellar's his. For life." Poirot nodded. "Il saura." Dr. Mortimer Thorne was last. The cuffs had been replaced with leather restraints, Broadmoor bound. His face was gaunt, the eyes sunken, but the defiance lingered like frost in the shade. 2 constables supported him. The poison had left his limbs weak. He stopped before Poirot. "You win, little man. The cells work after all." Poirot met his gaze. "Docteur, the cells are not mine. They are yours. You built the prison long before the syringe." Thorne's laugh was a rasp. "Edward's grave is cold. Mine will be warmer." Poirot produced a small envelope. "A letter from the War Office. Your brother's record, expunged. Death by misadventure. The betrayal buried with Sir Reginald." Thorne stared, then took it with trembling fingers. "Why?" "Parce que justice is not vengeance. Your brother deserves peace." Thorne's eyes glistened. Tears or melting ice, impossible to tell. The constables led him away. He did not resist. Hawkins emerged last, carrying Poirot's valise. The butler had changed into a plain black suit, his own, not livery. The ramrod spine was still there, but the mask had cracked. Grief and relief warred in his eyes. "Sir," he said, voice steady, "the house is yours to lock. I've left the keys on the hall table. The wine-cellar key, Master Edgar's gift, is in the strong-box." Poirot took the valise. "Monsieur Hawkins, you served 30 years under a lie. Now you serve yourself. Take the pension, take the cellar, take the moors. Walk them until the ghosts tire." Hawkins' lips twitched. The ghost of a smile. "Mrs. Beaton's staying on. Cook's a good woman. We'll manage." Poirot placed a hand on his arm. "Vous êtes libre." Hawkins hesitated. "The study, sir. The panel. Shall I brick it up?" Poirot considered. "No, leave it. Let the house breathe. Secrets rot in the dark." Hawkins nodded. He descended the steps, paused beside the sleigh, and for the first time in 30 years raised a hand in farewell, not a servant's bow, but a man's salute. Poirot watched them go, the sleigh bells fading, the horses' hooves crunching through the slush. The manor stood behind him. Windows open, curtains dancing. Somewhere inside, a clock struck noon. He turned back once. The priest's whole panel hung ajar. Sunlight spilled through, illuminating dust motes like golden confetti. The desk was bare, the safe empty, the brandy decanter, now harmless, gleaming in the light. Poirot spoke to the empty house. "Adieu, Frost Manor. Your night is over." He descended the steps. The gravel was soft now, yielding. His footprints would be the last. Until spring, the sleigh waited. Poirot climbed in, valise beside him. The driver cracked the reins, the horses leaned forward, and the manor receded, a dark shape against the white moor, already shrinking into memory. As they crested the hill, Poirot looked back. The house stood alone, windows winking in the sun. A single figure, Hawkins, stood on the steps, key in hand. He raised it, then turned and entered. The door closed. The thaw had begun. Justice, like snow, melts into the earth. And the moors, vast and silent, remembered nothing.